So we're joined all the way from the beautiful Central Valley, Fresno, California, by the owner of Nova Farming, Bellard.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. I got a room full here with me today at Velma Jackson High School. This is for our entrepreneurship class. We're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County schools, Madison Central, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, the Academic Options Center, and our YouTube channel. So we thank you so much for taking some time for us today.
Yeah. Thank you for reaching out and inviting me.
Yeah. Now we looked at a lot of your videos. And you're doing a lot of cool stuff. But give us a little background because you're from the Fresno area, but then you went all the way across the country to New York to go to Cornell University. So just give us a little bit of background about that because that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So I'm from a smaller town in Northern California called Gwenda. Grew up there, rural community, about 500 people in the town. I went to a small high school. My graduating class was 105 kids. This whole high school had 300 students. So I grew up in kind of rural America. My family's from Oakland, California and Richmond, California. So the Bay Area was a 4.3 GPA in high school. I had my AA by the time I graduated high school. And so Cornell or like the Ivy League was kind of like my path after high school. My older brother went to Prairie View and my little brother went to UC Davis. At Cornell, I studied biology and society, which is similar to public health, just more of a focus on the biological sciences aspect in regards to health factors in societal kind of situations. And yeah, then I came back to the Bay Area, came back to Oakland, was working in the anti-sex trafficking industry. So was working with girls in foster care that were at risk of or were currently being exploited. There were foster youth and group homes or, experiencing kind of issues in their own personal home. Then I went to get my master's at the University of Denver, Joseph Corbell School of International Studies, where I studied international human trafficking and forced labor. And it was during that time in 2018, 2019 that I called my dad and said, "Hey, Dad, I want to get back into agriculture. I want to get back into using ag as a way to rehabilitate marginalized populations, kind of back to the land as a way to kind of give them something else to do outside of what they were currently doing." And he said, "Okay." So I graduated in June 2020, came home during the pandemic, did a lot of odd jobs up until August 2021, until I made the move down to Fresno. And I was doing my ag company, Nova Farming, and at the same time, I was housing adults experiencing homelessness through the Independent Living Association. So I kind of started two companies at once. I was managing kind of two companies at once.
Wow.
And I've just been taking, what are we in 2024 now? I've got two homes now under my independent living housing. I've got a couple of contracts for selling beef, for selling ag education. So I have a lot of things kind of going now in 2024.
That's awesome. Well, I think it's cool that you're from a rural area because we're a rural community here in Camden.
Yeah.
But one thing we talk about, agriculture is big in Mississippi here as well. It is a
Mhm.
great field to get into as an employee. We have two great agricultural colleges here with Mississippi State and Alcorn State. So we encourage kids to look at agricultural careers. But there's a
Mhm.
big difference between having an agricultural career and running an agricultural business. So we have a lot of kids here that have experience in agriculture, but you can know
Mhm.
everything about agriculture, but not know anything about running a business. So
Mhm.
what type of learning curves did you have when you decided to open Nova Farming?
Yeah, so thankfully my dad is my business partner and mentor. So he had done kind of all of the heavy work prior to me getting into running my own business. He's an entrepreneur in the ag space. He's done a lot of work in with cattle, with crop production like hay and stuff like that. He's gone abroad to the western coast of Africa to help other people to consult other like
Oh, cool.
companies and other folks getting into the ag industry. So my learning curve wasn't that bad because my dad was there kind of like the path has already been laid, so I just had to walk it. But there is a difference in working in ag and then being an entrepreneur, being a business, a business person. So trying to find all the different ways that you want to make ag work for you, right? I raise livestock. Not many Black women in California are raising livestock. They're more doing gardening or they're doing like an urban type of like ag space, but nothing with like animals. But I pivoted to I kind of went back to what I know, which is raising and selling beef. So I sell beef to school districts. I have a whole supply chain of
Wow.
other Black folks that are doing cow-calf operation raising for me. And then also I have a slaughterhouse and a processor as part of my supply chain to kind of get my beef pushed out to school districts. But also
Wow.
I teach ag education because of my extensive history in ag. So I created my own curriculum for my company. And now I kind of I pushed that out to school districts like, hey, take me on as a vendor because I can teach your kids about the ag industry in a different way. So I take my small livestock to the schools, put them in my truck and trailer, and I teach kids with my sheep, with my goat there, with my chicken there. We're learning about ruminant digestive system. We're learning about reproductive systems. We're learning about how the egg gets to the table and the different dishes that you can make with just one egg. So I've taken it on because I know ag in a different way. I've taken it on to now showcase that to other people. But then also I'm selling beef, which not many Black folks are doing, especially not, they're maybe doing cow-calf operation, but they don't know the whole supply chain. And I know that thanks to my dad, because he's already experienced all this. He's already done all this. I'm just recreating it in a time where a Black person in ag is more favorable, and there's more opportunity for Black people in agriculture now.
Absolutely. And the crazy thing is the Central Valley of California is known for its garden. It's known for its soil, known for all the produce that is grown there. And I think a lot of people don't know about 90% of the produce and a lot of things that we get in the store is grown in that area of California.
Yes.
So you think of it
Yeah.
as produce. You don't think of it as livestock. So what
Yeah.
made you focus on the livestock side? Because we've seen the video, you've got the chickens, you've got the goats, you've got the sheep, you've got the pigs, and you've got the cattle. So what made you focus on that aspect of it?
Yeah, so I was just raising animals. So my brothers and I, in Gwenda, we've always had sheep, goats, chickens, horses, ponies, cats, dogs, cows. We hunt, we fish, we camp. So I've always been with the animal side, right? So when you think about Black people in the ag industry, they don't have that background. They don't have that childhood. But I was, grateful enough to have my dad, who had already worked with cattle. He had already worked with horses. He's already done all the livestock side. Then when it came time to him raising his kids, we learned like cow sense. We learned how to understand and read cows. We learned how to, understand about animals and what they feel and how to care for animals. Like my first kind of job growing up was when we had sheep. We had about 200 head of sheep. When my dad would go out and check sheep when they were lambing season, if there was a lamb that the mom didn't take, or if the mom had triplets and she couldn't care for that third one, he would bring it home 2, 3, 4 in the morning. I'm waking up and I'm caring for sheep at like 10, 11 years old. So I've always been able to work with livestock, but many Black folks don't have that opportunity to be around livestock. And so now as an adult, I mean, I have sheep, I have goats, I have pigs, I have, all the things that I had as a kid. I'm now able to recreate that for other people who didn't have access to that. So it just kind of just comes naturally to me to work with livestock versus like the gardening or farming aspect.
Yeah, and obviously you mentioned about the beef you sell.
Mhm.
What other things do you sell as far as things from the farm?
That's it. So I sell ag education and I raise beef. So I don't like I could, with livestock, you can kind of go like I can go the sheep route and I can sell lamb and wool. I shear sheep too. So I could like, be a shearer for hire, across the nation if I wanted to. I could do it traveling shearing. But my focus is beef because that's my dad's forte is beef husbandry.
Yeah.
So my focus is Black Angus, and we do have like a couple Hereford and Shorthorns in my herd. But also I run a cow calf. I run a supply chain of other Black folks who are raising cow calf. They just don't have that market. So thankfully, I'm like this face now for the Black agriculturalist or the Black rancher that my dad's friends who didn't have markets because they were Black men and nobody bought from them in the early 2000s or the 90s. They're still ranching, but now there's like, okay, Rizpah is kind of like that light for us to get to the market. So they're my supply chain. Raising Black Angus kind of to the same specifications that I have that match what my buyer wants. So yeah, just I sell beef and I sell education and really knowledge
That's awesome.
around the ag industry. Just I share a lot of knowledge around agriculture, how to get into the ag industry, what the ag industry entails, and really exposing a different side of the ag industry to folks that just don't know much about it.
Absolutely. Now, when it comes to selling beef, because
Mhm.
obviously there's a lot of beef distributors in the world,
Yes.
what makes you set yourself apart as a small business owner? Because that's something we're working on in class now.
Yeah.
Is they've all come up with their own business concepts. You may have a good idea, but how do you set yourself apart?
Yeah, so I really focus on that niche buyer for a school district who wants ground beef, right? I'm not going to compete with the larger wholesaler, the larger corporations. There's no way and there's not possible, and I don't want to. I'm a small rancher, and I have kind of focused in on school districts that have funding either through a grant from like California Department of Food and Ag. Those dollars have to go to a local farmer or rancher or to a school district that's saying, hey, we'd like to buy from local farmers, ranchers, because we have the money. We just don't have any local suppliers of beef. I've honed in on that. My dad and I have honed in on that. We say, we can sell you ground beef. And what we're different is that we don't do retail cuts. I don't cut it into the fillet. I don't cut the carcass down to like T-bone steaks. I take the whole carcass with all of the best cuts you can think of, and I turn it into ground beef. That way, 500 pounds of ground beef, I can deliver that easily. I slaughter a couple of cows. You're getting ground beef from the best cuts, best primal cuts, no organs. There's no orifles, no unwanted parts of the cattle, just the carcass, just the beef. Remove the bone, remove the orifles, and you're getting top-notch quality beef. That's what sets me apart, is that I'm just selling all ground beef with the best cuts. And that way I don't have to go in and kind of try and sell all of my other small cuts. Like I don't have to try and sell the fillets. I don't have to try and sell the ribeyes. I don't have to try and sell the New York steaks. It's all one go, slaughter, process, sell.
Wow. Well, and that's something that we've seen for some of these companies. You focus on being really good at one thing and make
Mhm.
that your goal. It's amazing how profitable that can be.
Yeah, I mean, and it really is word of mouth. Once you kind of get your business out there, people have to vouch for you. If it's not a good business, pivot. Like if you don't have a good product, people will let you know, you pivot. You don't just stay on it. You figure out how can I make it better, right? But I'm selling all natural beef with no hormones, no antibiotics.
Wow.
It's raised on pasture. So like the quality of the meat is going to be great quality because it's just the natural way that the cow is going to be raised. And I'm using using great genetics, right? Black Angus top-notch beef. But if my market wanted something different, I'd have to change. But as a business owner, you can also just say, well, where's the market that I can work best with? And that's what you go for. But if there is no market, you don't want to keep doing the business. You want to just say, okay, let me pivot. Let me go back to the drawing board. Let me change it up. You don't want to stay selling something. That's my dad always says, you don't want to grow watermelons if you don't have somebody to buy them once it's harvest season. You don't just put an idea out there and just hope that people buy it and then keep pushing that idea if nobody wants to buy it. No, you go back to the drawing board. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're a businessman, you go back to the drawing board and you say, what else can I do? What are people buying? What will people want in 5 years? What will people want to purchase in 3 years? What's going to be on their mind in the
Yeah.
next 6 months or a year? So you want to kind of get ahead of what people want. You want to understand what people want, and then you want people to speak positively about it. So have a good product, speak positively about it, and they'll sell your product for you.
Absolutely. Now, you've mentioned something a couple of times I think is important, and I know I can speak for all the other teachers that'll see this later, is um, later on this week, they're all going to be doing presentations about different entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
And it is a matter of learning to speak, learning to articulate, learning to sell. Because let's face it, you can be have a great idea. You can be a hard worker. You can
Mhm.
be great with numbers. But if you can't sell something, if you can't speak about it, you're not going to make any money. So how
Mhm.
important is it to hone those speaking skills now? Because look, the TikTok generation is taking over,
Yeah.
and that's fun and fine, and that's great. But at the end of the day, you've got to be able to speak and be able to sell, even if you're not an entrepreneur. If you're going to be an employee, if somebody's working for you, they've got to be able to sell what you're selling. So how important is it to be good at these speaking and selling skills?
Yeah, I mean, and that's something that I've had to work on myself. I came from the nonprofit space. I've just come from like being boots on the ground, working with people. So not really having to sell an idea, or not really having to pitch an idea that other people will kind of bite into. So I've grown in that. I mean, and I'm 30 years old now. Like I've had to grow in that in my late 20s to learn how to sell, learn how to be a businesswoman, learn how to be an entrepreneur. So it's never too late to learn this skill. But it's really important to understand your product, understand what you have to offer, understand the market. What does the market even want to buy? What are they asking for? What don't they know that they want that they'll want, down the line? But then really standing behind that. Like if you understand your product and you understand what the market wants to buy, you just kind of solidify yourself in saying, what I have is good, what I have is great, and this is why you want it. And then you just kind of just you just it just kind of just rolls off like it's in you. This is the product that you stand by. Now, if it's something that you don't believe in or something that you don't stand by, you're not going to sell it. It's going to be very hard for you to sell something that you don't really believe in or you don't believe is going to make a difference or it's going to be beneficial to your buyer. But if it's something that you created and you stand behind it and you stand beside it, then you'll have kind of an easier time really pushing that out and getting other people to bite onto it.
Yeah, and you mentioned something there. I like what you said, beneficial to your buyer, because the word I use a lot is perceived value.
Mm.
And if people think they're getting, I mean, obviously you're not going to rip people off, but if people think they're
Mhm.
getting a great deal, if they think they're getting something better than everybody else, people are willing to pay for it. So many
Yes.
young kids have come through. We've had several in this class that have started their own business. And I'll immediately say, hey, you're not charging enough.
Hmm.
I mean, you have to get out of the 15, 16-year-old mindset. You have to see what people will pay for it because I always say, if people will pay it, you need to charge it. If people
Yes.
will buy it, you need to sell it. So, what type of obstacles have you had in that regard of knowing how to a good price point on your product?
So the good thing about ag is that there's a market price for everything. There's a market price for zucchini. There's a market price for squash. There's a market price for beef. There's a market price for poultry. This is all set like at the national level. It's a national stock market value, right? So there's a value that you can say, okay, at the basic level, if I were to take this item to an auction or if I would take this to the farmer's market, this is like the base price that I have. But also as a niche producer, right? I know that I'm running cattle on conserved land. They're pasture raised, no antibiotics, no hormones, raised with love, stress free. I have all these additives, not like artificial additives, but I have all these extra things that I'm like that's going into my product that makes it well worth what the average price is, right? And then you also have to add in like I'm a small farmer, I'm a small rancher, doing a lot of this. I'm running cattle up and down the state of California. I'm diesel charged. So you bring into all these costs that are going behind, behind your product. And then that's how you add, like, you don't need to add a crazy value. You don't need to add a crazy amount, but you just figure out what's the average price? What's like the national price? What are people paying in my area? What can people afford in my area? Right? If your area does not have a high income level, you don't want to be charging something outrageous that people can't afford. You want to be mindful of what can people afford in your area. Maybe take your product to another area that has a higher income level that can pay for the higher value price, but then also your price has to be of high value too. But yeah, so I'm mindful of like for beef, I'm mindful of like the market value, but also what I add as a niche supplier.
Absolutely. And you can do small things that can justify charging more. People are
Mhm.
willing to pay 5, 10, $20 more for just a few extra things. People will pay for convenience. And having
Mhm.
that great customer service to say, look, you're going to get a great product and I'm going to do XYZ, that justifies being able to charge more.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, again, like we're in the day and age where people don't necessarily want to have to go to you. So if you can deliver something to them, you charge them that. You charge like a nominal fee, nothing crazy, but you charge them for like, what it would be for, because now you're like, okay, they can pay this $5 like DoorDash. I can pay the $5 or $6 for you to deliver it, or I have to get up, put some clothes on, get in my car, go drive to you, stop at the stoplights, talk to, all this other thing. So people will pay for the convenience of everything too.
Yeah. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about too is your nonprofits that you've been involved in. And I know you have one that's active and you've been involved with other ones. And I know that's something that's important to you. And we've had some kids that have been interested in starting nonprofits
Mm.
because they can be profitable to the entrepreneur, but they also can serve a great service for your community. So
Mm.
just talk a little bit about how nonprofits really are needed and some of the ones that you've been involved in and that you're involved in now.
Yeah, so nonprofits really, I mean, the way I look at it is they're able to work in a space where there is no real financial gain for the company or for the organization, right? When I was working in the Bay Area, I worked for the nonprofit Missy. We worked with young girls who are at risk of or currently being sexually exploited, and my focus client population were the students or the girls who were in foster care. Nonprofits work on grants. So as you, as like the CEO or the executive director of the organization has a good idea, you have to look for grants to be able to afford the staff, to be able to afford the building, the maintenance, the water that you all need, the events that you all host. The nonprofit space is really grants focused. You have to be out hustling for money. You have to be out at galas, at events, talking to city officials, really hustling to get money for the idea or for kind of like the value that your organization offers to either to like a homeless population or to youth or to animals, to whatever population you deem is disadvantaged and needs your support. So nonprofits are really, if you're going to be working nonprofit, you're hustling for money because you're not gaining the money from the folks because you're providing a free service to them. That free service is being paid for by a grant. It could be a $150,000 grant. It could be a $10,000 grant over here. It could be $1 million grant from the city. You really have to hustle out and get the money. But again, it goes back to, do you believe in the mission and the value of your organization? Like, do you think that this is actually going to be something beneficial for those in need? But also it's being a people person. You have to be out and you have to be talking to people who have the money, people who control who does and doesn't get the money, regardless if they fill out the application fully or not. Like, nonprofit space is all about networking. So you have to be able to hold conversations with folks and really have a good understanding of what you're, let's say you're working on a nonprofit in your city, what the city landscape is, where the money is going, what grants are going to who's kind of like a person that gives the grants, who's kind of like keeps the money. Like, so you want to get out and you want to network with people so you have an understanding of how to get money. That's the nonprofit space, because you're not making profit for the services that are being offered. I personally, my house runs as a corporation. So the housing company works as a corporation, but I do have a fiscal arm, a fiscal nonprofit that if people do want to donate, I can take on those donations, but I run it as kind of like a landlord situation, but my tenants all come from organizations that are nonprofits. So the nonprofits for the
Oh,
most
cool.
part are paying for their housing. So they're coming from a shelter, they're coming from a homeless shelter, they're coming from a domestic violence shelter. Those organizations pay for their housing either like on a 6-month stability program or a year-long stability program. And that's because their staff are going out, the CEO, the executive director, the account department is going out and hustling to get money from the city, from the county, from the state, or whatever, to get funding to house their people in need.
That's awesome. Now, one thing I want to talk about before I get to the students' questions
Yeah.
is obviously you've been, even though you are not much older than these kids,
Yeah.
you've been in situations that I've had several people in similar situations that said their imposter syndrome was extremely strong
Yeah.
because the Ivy League is getting more and more diverse, but at the same time, there's not a whole lot of small town black girls that go
Mhm.
to Ivy League schools. And then, like you said yourself, there's not a whole lot of black female farmers that I know of anywhere, but
Mhm.
especially there where you are. So, what type of things that have you done to overcome kind of that mental block that you might have being one of the only people in a certain space?
Yeah. So going to the Ivy League, it definitely took me finding my community, right? There's at every higher institution, there's going to be a group of Black folks, right? Because you all were smart enough to get in, you're all capable of being there. But it also comes with maturity, just understanding what your value is. I mean, as a woman myself, understanding what my value is. I have high level of self-respect, high level of self-esteem, high level of confidence. This comes over time, right? And you develop it. As a businesswoman now, I mean, and I like this is aside from just like the business side. When I cut my hair off, I like my self-esteem, my confidence went like, can't nobody tell me nothing, right? And that just came from cutting my hair. That wasn't even like anything that I had done in the real world. I just felt like chop it all off in 2021, and I have just been like the next level of Rizpah. So as a woman, it's kind of going from a young girl to a teenager to a young adult to now 30-year-old woman. It just takes time to develop confidence, to develop maturity, to develop a sense of self. And this just comes from growing up, being in different spaces, being in different circles, talking to different people, really understanding what do I like, what don't I like, who do I want to be, where do I want to see myself, what kind of partner, what kind of relationship do I want to be in, what kind of things do I value, right? When you move away from how you were raised, you're creating like your own space as a woman, as an adult. It's really thinking about what do I want to do, who do I want to be, right? And
Yeah.
that's something that just takes time, maturity. The imposter syndrome is real, especially when you're going into spaces that you hadn't been in before. You're like, oh, I'm used to being the student, or I'm used to, I'm a little bit more on the shy side. Like, believe it or not, I was really shy as a high school student. I, excelled academically, but to get up in public speak, I would dang near pass out. I was just like, oh, it's so scary. But as an adult, you just mature, you just grow, but you have to be confident and you have to be secure in yourself. And I mean, I just continue as I get older, I continue to be more confident and more secure. And that shows, that exudes. I mean, that's how I'm able to have these businesses. That's how I'm able to get these interviews because I'm a positive light. I'm confident. I know what I'm talking about in the spaces that I talk. I know I know a little bit about a lot of things, so I'm able to speak on those
Yeah.
things in a lot of different spaces. I'm a Jill of all trades. So just kind of building yourself up and just saying, what do I want to learn? I mean, for instance, I was like, I want to learn how to shear sheep. I went to a sheep shearing school in April. I was the top shearer for a 9-minute shear out of like all the beginning students in the history of the class. Like, so just knowing like I can do it and there's nothing really stopping me because this is something that I want to do. So, and if you don't like it, you just stop. Like that's another thing about maturing. If you don't like something, you just stop. If you don't like a friend group, you just stop. If you don't like the way somebody's talking to you, you don't like relationship, you just leave. Like that's another thing about maturing is just like you don't have to deal with it. You just do what you want to do. You become confident, you become secure, and you just move on in that way.
Yeah, and I always say just because you're the first at something doesn't mean you can't be the best at something. And it really,
I'm the
there's never
best at
been
a
a better.
lot of things. I'm the best at it. And it's just because I'm strong perseverance. I'm a hard worker. I know that I can do it. I want to do it. Like it's just, it's just in me.
Man, and it shows. I mean, and you're extremely humble. You've been featured in Cowgirl magazine, all types of publications, Fresno
Yeah.
Bee. So really, really taking off. But I do have some questions here. I'm gonna get to as many of these as
Yeah.
I can. This first one is Anthony Walker. He's a senior,
Okay.
one of our football players here, and he asked, "Was your dad your main motivation to stay in the beef industry, or do you think you would have focused on something else?"
Yeah. So my personal passion is anti-trafficking. But my dad, was raised in a two-parent household. I think my parents got divorced when I was 17, 18 in college. So I was a daddy's girl growing up. When I came out of my grad program, I just was like, I want to get back to what I know. And what I know aligns with what my dad knows is how he raised my brothers and I, which is an ag, which is raising beef. So I guess to answer your question, if he wasn't here, if he wasn't my mentor, I wouldn't have gone into the beef industry. But because he is my mentor, and he even told me, he said, Rizpah, he was ready for retirement. He said, but because you, one of my kids, because my brothers didn't want to get into the industry, he said, because you want to get into this, I'll come out of retirement and I'll teach you everything I know. And that started in 2021. And from there, I have just been like sailing because of of the partnership and kind of the guidance. And we both want this for me, for my family, for the future of whatever I'm going to bring. So if he wasn't in the industry, or if he wasn't here, or if he was like, I'm already retired, I wouldn't go into the beef industry. I would have stayed in trafficking, anti-trafficking rather.
Well, and that's a good segue to this one. This is Caden Williams. He's a sophomore, another one of our football players.
Okay.
And he asked, do you think you'd ever get out of farming? And if you did, would you, even if you didn't run the business, would you still farm on your own?
No, I mean, ranching is in you. Once you start, you don't stop. I mean, as long as I have buyers for the beef, I'm gonna keep selling beef. But I'm gonna pivot into other spaces, right? I do the housing. I'll probably make my way back into anti-trafficking. I'm in the education space. I probably go into like, a political space, like running for a city council or something. So there's all these different ways, but as long as somebody's buying beef, I'm gonna keep selling beef. And right now I'm on like such like a not even like such a high, but there's such a like a desire for what I have that I can't stop. And this could be going on for the next 20, 50, 30 years. Like I'm not going to stop. Because as long as people are eating hamburgers and hot dogs, I got beef to sell.
Oh, big time. I like this one. This is Terry Thompson. He's a senior, another one of our football players. And he asked, how did you learn the business tactics of running a business like the financing and marketing?
Oh, my dad. If there is a businessman out there, it is my father. He is a big time entrepreneur. My dad's from the hood. He grew up in Parchester Village in Richmond, California. He's out of 10 kids. He's the only boy. He's got 9 sisters. So if there's somebody who can make you buy some socks and you don't even wear shoes, that's my dad, right? Like he taught me the business side. And again, I'm more of like the nonprofit space, like to help people, like to work with people. I'm boots on the ground. You tell me what you need. But my dad really has given me that confidence and that push. Again, if he wasn't in if he said no to me wanting to get into the beef industry, I wouldn't be in it. But because he's there to support me and to push me we have talks daily. We talk every single day, Monday through Sunday, about what it takes for me to be a businesswoman. How can I advance? How can I be stronger in this space? I mean, and that's really important, not just like as a business partner, but as a father-daughter, kind of relationship. I mean, that just it just makes it so strong. But I've always had my dad, so it's just taken it to another level. But now it's like my success is his success, and his knowledge is my knowledge. So it's really like I can't fail in this space. Yeah, I'm just keep it going. And I forgot what the question was. I hope I answered it, but yeah, just
Yeah,
keep
you
going.
did. All right, now,
Okay.
I like this one. This one is very interesting, and this is Robert Branson. He's a senior. We got a lot of football players in here, and he
Okay.
asked, "What are the biggest pros and cons of farming in a climate like California?"
Whew, so as a rancher, I'm understanding that water in California is needed for people, needed for humans to run their houses, run their sewage, give them showers, give them potable water, all those things. So I don't think that ag is going to stay in California. And in 50 years, it's going to go to Africa. In 50 years, it's going to go somewhere where there is more resources, more capital, more water, more land. It just hasn't gotten there yet, but that's where it's going to go. I mean, the same way that America, started with farming and, now here we are, this great nation. Other countries are going to have the same thing going on. Other continents are going to have the same thing going on. But I run ag, I run cattle. So just being mindful of, how many cattle I run on acreage, not overdoing the grazing, really making sure that my supply chain is mindful of what their cow calf operation numbers are looking like and how much land they're running on and what their access to water is. But, I know that like in California, the water has to go to humans first. So I don't think that ag is necessarily is necessarily going to stay in California. I think it's going to go to the continent of Africa because there's water, resources, land, workforce, just need some more capital.
Yeah, my uncle actually works in the oil and gas industry in Equatorial Guinea, there in West Africa.
Oh,
So,
nice. Nice.
so yeah, you are 100% correct on that. All right, so I've got one more question, but before I get
Yeah.
to it, because it's from the one female that's in this class. But
Yeah,
before I get to
right.
that,
I'm like, why I got all these boy questions?
before I get to that, I say this all the time, and I know they get sick of me talking about it. But
Mhm.
why is it so important that we have more successful Black men in our communities?
We need, I mean, I'm gonna just say we need more fathers. We need more fathers in the households. And that comes from me just being a Black woman, outside of the professional space, me being a woman who was dating. You don't have a lot of Black men who have the father, so they don't understand the male role. They don't understand what it means to be a head of household, and they don't understand what it means to be a positive partner, right? There's this term toxic masculinity, but people who don't have fathers, Black men who don't have fathers, they don't necessarily know how to be a good supportive husband, partner, father, because they've never seen that. So I think that when we have more successful Black men who have the right mindset, who aren't on some crazy next level stuff, but who have the right mindset of wanting to care for their community, wanting to give back to their community, wanting to support their woman, whether the woman is Black, white, Latino, whatever, just wanting to be a positive person. The community does better. Black people do better. I think we really need to have more strong Black men in the community. And my boyfriend is a Black male. He's a vice principal at a high school. We talk about this all the time, about just the lack of fathers, present fathers in the Black household, and how that damages not only the young men, but the young women as well. Not having a father present does a lot of damage to the Black community. So if we have more successful Black men, I'm hoping and I'm assuming that that would transition to positive Black fathers, positive Black role models in the Black community.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of great fathers in our community here, a lot of great hardworking guys. But we can never have enough. They have a lot of these guys have dads that set great examples. But we just want to see them follow in their footsteps.
Yes, yes.
It's my last one, and this is Destiny Smith. She's the only young lady with us here today.
Okay.
She's a senior, and she asked, "I'm the only girl in this class, but I'm really enjoying listening to you. What advice would you give me being a young Black girl about to graduate from high school?"
Go to college. Go to college, get it paid for. And if they want you to study abroad, go to Chile, go to Argentina, go to Japan, travel, get out of your bubble, because the world is so big. Again, I mean, I came from a rural town. My majority of my classmates were white or Mexican, not many Black people. My brothers and I made up like a majority of the Black population. But get out. You know, I went to the East Coast, went to New York, upstate New York, met a lot of people from New York, DC, Florida, different states, different countries. I did an internship abroad in Peru. I'm fluent in Spanish, so I was able to go down to Peru. Traveling really does great things for women in general. People will say like, oh, it's scary to travel, especially coming from small towns. I know, because I'm from a small town. You know, oh, it's scary to travel, and oh, you don't know what's out there, and you're a young woman and somebody's gonna get you. Don't nobody want you. You go out there, you travel, you enjoy yourself, you sightsee, you do. I used to stay a lot in hostels, you know, so there's a lot of other people from different countries just traveling and just, you know, just wanting to just spend time in a different country, but learn a language, you know, but definitely go to college. And if they want you to study abroad, if there's an opportunity to study abroad, take that scholarship and go somewhere else. Go to Tokyo, you know, go to school in Taipei, Taiwan. Like, get out there and expand your horizons of what can be. Because when you stay in your town, or when you stay in your community, or you stay around people who are in the same place as you don't know the opportunities that lie ahead. And the world is so vast. The opportunities are so vast. I mean, I came back to ranching because that's what I know. But even in that, I mean, I'm fluent in 3 languages, so I'm able to communicate with multiple communities. I'm in education now because I've done that in like previous experiences. Like, you can just learn so much, and you can be when you become a worldly person, a worldly woman, just you can do so much in the world. So go to college and travel.
Yeah, and she's interested in working in the film industry, so that's something she'll pretty much have to travel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us. But a couple things before we go. First of all, tell us where to find all your information, your website, all the things you're posting is really cool.
Yeah, so my website is www.agnovafarming.com. My Instagram handle for my Nova Farming is nova.farming. LinkedIn, it's Nova Farming as well. Other than that, yeah, you could also just Google me, Rizpah Bellard, and I'm everywhere at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but the last thing before we go is, why does our communities need these kids to really consider being entrepreneurs?
I think because we know what we need, we know what we want, we know what we'll buy. And I think entrepreneurship, when you're selling something that's really beneficial to the community, right? Not, not something that everybody's doing, but I'm providing food for everybody that's healthy, nutritious. I think entrepreneurship is really good to just generate more money in the community, get some more dollars going, build up the economy. I can create jobs for folks as I build my corporations. I'm creating jobs for people in a space that they didn't know. Entrepreneurship really just helps you figure out what, like, I have a different viewpoint, a different understanding than my white counterparts, or than my Asian counterparts, or my Latina counterparts, because I am Black. So just bringing in those different views into what do people want to buy, and just figuring out, how can I make that next big thing, like that next big thing that people want to buy, and I can either continue it or I can sell it at a high price and then just continue it on, right?
Love it. Well, again, we thank you so much for joining us all the way out of the Central Valley. Rizpah Bellard, owner of
Yeah,
Nova
thank you.
out there in Fresno. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem. Thank you. Okay.
I talk to you
Bye.
soon, buddy.
Okay.